Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the CyberGizmo, I'd like to do a couple of things, a little housekeeping, and then jump into a topic about some of the options you have if you want to create a network-attached storage for your home right after this. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is a little housekeeping. I wanted to give you all a big thank you. Thank you so much for helping this channel. By the time you see this, we'll probably be over 200 subscribers. I never thought that this channel would reach that many subscribers in as short a period as it has. The topics that I cover are a bit advanced, and you know, I just didn't think that there would be that many people. I mean, the reason why I started the channel was to give something back to the community. I've been around Unix for at least 35 years and Linux for 20 at least, pretty close to 20. But yeah, I wanted to give something back to you folks so that, you know, there's more to Linux than just looking at distributions and file systems. And there's a lot of different things you can do with it. And that's what I hope to have covered with this. And 200 of you thought that was worthwhile, and I sure do appreciate it. I don't always get notifications on who joins the channel. YouTube is very sporadic. If those of you have channels, you know this. It's very sporadic about telling you who joined and who's subscribed. So a big thank you. Thank you so much. And also the topic today is network attached storage. So there are 3 ways you can do this. The first way is you can go out and buy one. You can just pick one off the shelf, put some hard drives in it, plug it into the network, plug it into the wall, do some basic configuration, set up your shares, you're done. Maybe a couple of user accounts, but you're done at that point and you're ready to go. The second way is you can take an old computer, an old PC, and you can attach files to it or stick more hard drives in it than what it originally had. Install some software on it that's free, the free software, and that's the only 2 things I'm going to look at today. There is Unraid, but Unraid is licensed. You have to pay for that. So I'm not going to cover Unraid on this channel. I don't cover commercial software, just open source. That's just my choice, and I just want to keep it that way. I mean, the whole purpose of Linux and the open source community is to be able to free and openly be able to put that software on any platform you want, be able to move it around as you see fit. So that's kind of what I agree with, and that's kind of what I want to do. So you can go out and get some software and you can install it, or you can just take your current Linux distribution and you can turn it into a NAS. You can do it yourself, and so I probably won't cover the third option. Well, I know I won't do it today, but I don't know if I'll do one in the future or not. Typically, when I've talked about file storage in the past, there hasn't been a whole lot of interest, but if you guys feel differently, leave a comment below, and if 5 of you or 3 of you do it, I'll do a video. I won't need 100 people to tell me to do the video. I'll be happy to do that. But in the past, it just hasn't been all that interesting to people. So, you know, if you're not interested, I don't think I need to do a video on it. There's probably others around that tell you how to do it anyway. But let's look at the first option. So I'm over here on the Amazon site. And so the 16 terabyte drive is around now. So you have a little bit more storage that you have that you can work with. They're like Seagate has one for their Iron Wolf series, and also they have one for their Exynos series drives. Which drive you pick depends on the cost and how much you want to spend and how much you want to store. So the first thing you probably need to figure out for your NAS is how many, do you need one? That's the first question. And the second question is, what do you want to store? Is it photos? Is it movies? Is it MP3 files, music? Is it books? Is it just private documents and things about maybe your family that you want to keep? Maybe online birth certificates, that kind of thing. That's what you need to figure out first, is what you want to store on it, and then what parts of that you might want to secure. If it's financial data, of course, you want to secure that, or tax information as well. You'll want to secure that by encrypting it. So you'll want to find a system that offers support for that. As far as how much hard drive space you have, figure out how much you have now, and then I would triple it. Because based on the life of the drive, that's usually the case on how fast they fill up. Just remember that when, even with the rules of thumb, those can be proven wrong within a month or even a year. Simply because in disk space, the old adage was data expands to fill all available storage within a year. And in a lot of cases, that is certainly true. So you have some options on what hard drives you want. Of course, they come in 4 gig all the way up. As you can see, I don't know if the prices are here. These are going to be they're going to be pricier as you go up in storage. Also, in the Iron Wolf series, these come in 5,600 RPM up to 7,200 RPM. So if speed is a concern to you, you're probably going to be wanting to look at the 7,200 drives. If you don't care about that, then you're probably just looking at the lower cost drives. One of the sites that I do my backups to, they actually about every quarter or so, they publish statistics on the drives that they use, how many they have in service, how many have failed during the life of the drive, and then they compare that to the other manufacturers. And so they publish that. So you can go out there and you can read it. I'll put a link below of where that is, and you can read the drive statistics for yourself. They do not use enterprise drives at all. They just go out and they get desktop drives or they get NAS drives and they just put them in the cabinet and they just use that until they fail and then they replace them. So maybe that's a good option for you as well. I don't know. Not making any recommendations. Your needs for storage are different probably than mine. More than likely, they're very different than mine. But yeah, you can go out. There's a Synology. Here's a 2-bay one. So with a mirrored system and a 16 terabyte drive, you can store up to 16 terabytes of data in that. I would not recommend using a RAID 0 in that cabinet. I don't recommend RAID 0 for anything because the problem with RAID 0 is all it takes is one drive failure and you've lost all your data. Yes, you have to back up. Even with a mirrored drive, I recommend that you back up. Don't count on RAID being your backup. That's not what it's for. It's meant for continuous operations. It's not to be used as a backup. And here's the problem. If you bought 2 drives at the same time from the same manufacturer and one of them has a defect and it fails, chances are really good if they're made in the same time frame. The other one probably has that same defect and it'll probably show up when you go to recover. So that's why you don't want to count on backups. Also, if you can, buy your drives from 2 different places because then the chances are that at least half your drives from one place, half from another. That way, at least you have some chance that they're not in the same sequence. And that's particularly true of hard drives. Now, if you're using SSDs, that's less of an issue, simply because they don't have movement. They aren't mechanical. So yeah, you can, the other thing about these, you'll notice that this is diskless and they do not have any drives in them. And it's about $300 or so for the cabinet. So you can count on per slot. This is kind of a general rule of thumb. $130 up to $150 per drive tray is generally what these are going to cost if they have networking capabilities included with them. Now, some of these, so be careful when you're looking at these, say they're NAS, and they're not. They're actually USB drives. So they attach by a USB to your machine. NAS should be freestanding. They should not. They should be connected to the network. They have their own processor, their own memory, their own operating system, and that's the way they should be. So make sure that you are getting a network attached storage and not a backup drive. They're not the same thing. You can also get them from TerraMaster. They're a little cheaper. In fact, quite a bit cheaper than Synology is. But my advice is if you go this route, these work okay, but the software in it is horrible. In my opinion, it's terrible. I would get a 4-pin to VGA connector, and I would put it. You can connect it. You can slide it the cover back, plug it onto the motherboard, plug a monitor in it and a keyboard. And then I would wipe their software off and I would put Linux on it if I were you. Yeah, so you can go the whole gamut here. There's 4 drive bays, like the DS418 and the Synology 6-bay 1618. There's also some larger ones. Don't see that showing up on this one yet. There's like an 8-bay. But as I said, as you go up, as you go up, they get more expensive. So I think the first thing to do is maybe just go over to Synology and look at theirs first. So they have a number of products. These are all listed for home. If I go over here into NAS and IP span, now and then there's also larger ones that have faster. As you go up in the tiers, of course, they get more expensive. So let's say you wanted a 4-drive, 4-bay system. I think that might be 4 or 5. That's 5. Let's get this one. So this number out here is the number of drives that this one will support. You can buy extenders for these. It used to be that this was the maximum, that number, 9, is the number of maximum that you can attach to the machine. This number is the year in which it was introduced. Usually, that used to be the case. I think it still is. But let's look at the specs for this. So we have an Intel J3455. That is relatively newer. It's a quad-core, 1.5 gigahertz up to 2.3. 4 gig of memory up to 8. Now I know this processor has virtualization. I know I think it also has threading. No. We'll go check that to see if it has threading. Let's go look. We put in. This is for one of their other processors. Let's do 3450, right? $34.55, is that right? Yep. Okay. So that one was introduced in 2016. No threads, just 4 cores. Okay. That's probably okay for some additional. Now in Synology's case, and also with a lot of these other commercial ones like QNAP, you can run external applications in them. You can run Docker, and you can run Nextcloud, OwnCloud. You can run Plex, and you can even, if you want, you can even run virtualization servers inside those boxes. And of course, the closer that software runs to the storage, the faster those types of things will work. However, make sure, it does support virtualization, but with 4 cores, I mean, you're only going to get maybe 2 virtual machines out of that, probably. Only 2, and Docker probably would be okay. Docker, you could probably live in that. Also has AES, depends again on your application. Everything depends on the application. Intel AES instructions, this is for encryption. This is a hardware accelerated encryption and decryption, and there's some basic things in here as to what is actually supported, and so you can read about that as to which algorithms are actually supported by the hardware. But yeah, that's a good thing. So let's go back to the Synology page. You can plug 2 NVMEs in. I don't know if this is the model where they had so much problems with the power supplies or not, but I don't know, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I do know that they have had some issues with power supplies failing on some of their earlier models of these. Yeah, okay. So Synology has their own operating environment, and it allows you to configure users and your shares, allows you to set up NFS and Samba, and I don't know what else that there is. I don't personally have a Synology. I didn't elect to go that way, but I do know a lot of YouTubers use these for storage of videos. So it is a very well-liked system. If you go look at some of the cheaper products, however, like this one is the 418 Play. This is a dual-core Celeron J3355. Now, you definitely couldn't run even Docker on this. This machine would be Used only for doing Samba shares, NFS shares, managing the file system, and that's it. With 2 cores, that's about all you could do. And the amount of memory on it is a little bit limited. It has 2 gig, it looks like inbuilt, and you can add a 4 gig card to it for a total of 6. So yeah, there's not a lot of application base you're going to be able to run on that. One of the older ones down here is the 418. I'm just kind of skipping around and looking at them. Now this is a Realtek RTD 1296. That is an ARM. So that particular processor is, 4K P60? I don't think so. I would bet 4K P25, but not 60. ARM chips just, especially ones in this vintage. This is about 2016. Yeah, 2017 was the review in June. I think that chip actually came out in 2016. So yeah, I would be, no, I don't think so. I don't think you'll get, in fact, I know you won't get 4K 60 out of that machine. It's a great bragging point, but it's not possible. Now, 1080, yeah, it'll definitely do that, no problem. But it does have a combination of DDR3 and 4 that it can use. Did they tell me here which one? No, well, yeah, DDR4. So that would be LPDR4, I think. Is that right? No, it's DDR. Okay, so it's full. It's full speed. So not bad. But again, quad core, yeah, you could run Docker on it. You could have, the only problem is going to be memory. Can I get additional memory? I don't think so. Most of the problem with most of the ARM socks is the memory is soldered on. That's probably it. That would be light. You could probably do some really lightweight Docker on that, but probably not much else. And of course, it would support NFS and Samba with that amount of memory. That's no problem to do that. 4K. Maximum says, yeah, no, I don't think so. I'm not buying it. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. So that's one option that you could go with. You could go buy the ones that a lot of the professional guys use is these, or the QNAPs, and it's simply because they come with a more robust core and a more robust system. Now you can get these in AMD as well, and also I think they have some ARM versions of those as well. So these are going to be a little bit more expensive. As for failure rates, they're all about the same hardware-wise. I don't think any of the hardware is any better than any of the other hardware. They will all fail at about the same rate, which is, I mean, they'll last you. Well, the cabinets will last way beyond the life of the drives, probably 10 years. The drives, of course, if you're using it heavy, probably 3 years. Right at the time where the warranty expires, the drives usually fail. These companies aren't stupid. There are some drives that go out to 5 years, but of course you pay for that. Now, FreeNAS, you have 2 options. They have their, I don't know what happened to TrueNAS. Oh, it's still here. But you can go buy a ready-made system with FreeNAS on it. Now, FreeNAS is Berkeley Software Distribution based, BSD. And it is free software, but if you want to buy a pre-built, you can do that, and you can also purchase support with it. So if you're using this for a small business, you do have those options available to you where you can just buy one off the shelf that has FreeNAS on it. Now, FreeNAS is very popular. It is ZFS based. It has a little bit higher learning curve than some of the other solutions I'm going to talk about today. So it does take you a little longer to learn this, simply because there are more options in it. And of course, you would take an old PC, you can plug your drives into it. If you want it, you can do not use a RAID card with ZFS. Don't use a RAID card. Because what you're doing is you're masking off the hardware from ZFS, and ZFS wants to manage the hardware. And if you have a RAID card in between, it lies. It tells ZFS the one thing, and then ZFS will try to manage the RAID, and the RAID's going to be trying to manage the drives, and that's not going to work. You want to use a host controller, or you want to plug it in directly to the SATA ports on the motherboard. So if you need more than if you need more ports than the 6 that usually is on a motherboard, 6, 8, sometimes 4. Depends on what your motherboard is. Yeah, if you need more drives than that, then you would need a host controller to do that. And you can get those either in SAS or SATA. Of course, SAS is going to be more expensive, and the drives are going to be more expensive. But you can do that. They have some guidelines on here as to what the minimum requirements are for the hardware. I'm not going to go over those with you. Again, I think you can probably read those for yourself. This is used a lot by YouTubers to store their videos. I use a BSD system with CFS, but I don't use FreeNAS. I have built my own. And you know, FreeNAS has a nice GUI. It tells you what's going on. It has a dashboard. You can install apps in addition. It will support virtual machines, whether they're installed within FreeNAS or they're external. You can use iSCSI targets to hook up the virtual machines to the box and dedicate storage for those. And then you also have Docker, of course, and Nextcloud and Plex, and there's probably 10,000 applications you can run on that as well. The only problem with BSD are drivers. So if BSD's drivers always lag behind Linux because a lot of times they get their drivers from Linux to put in their kernels, so they're never going to be up on the latest. So if you're buying the latest Ryzen processors, you may run into issues on BSD. So, I mean, that being said, it's a good system. It's widely used. They have a great support. They have an active forum, and I have no hesitation recommending them to you. The other option is one that runs on Linux. This is Open Media Vault. I'm sure that most of you have heard of this. There are other options as well. As I said, Unraid is another popular one, but again, that's commercial software. Open Media Vault is free and open source, and it runs on Debian. They do not use CFS. This is a software RAID, and so you're going to run into the issues of how many drives you can actually support with the RAID and be able to effectively recover. So I would say, again, this is a general rule of thumb: 100 terabyte, 200 terabyte max, probably on a home PC that you could effectively manage with a software RAID. I don't know if I would go 200. I might just stay at 100. So if your needs are more than this, then go look at FreeNAS. Or go look at one of the commercial solutions to do this. But today I thought probably the best thing to do is kind of go through this with you. Let me see where my virtual machine went. It's running, so I'm just going to go over to it. And it has a web front end, so your default password when you log in for the first time is admin. And I would recommend that you go in and change that as soon as you install it. But it has a nice GUI front end. So the first place it takes you when you log in is to the diagnostics page, so you can look at the services that are running. I have gone through this and done some setup ahead of time. I did not set up a RAID. I just set up a single drive to kind of get familiar with this version. I haven't used this in some time. But yeah, the general settings is where you would go to change your web admin password. And then what I usually do is go in as an SSH into the system, or in the console window, we'll go look and see what other users have login capabilities and make sure that those passwords have been changed as well. One of the favorite backdoor methods into systems that are web-driven like this is to figure out what users, in addition to the ones that you have specified in the web tool, are active in the system, and then use those to gain access. So if you're planning to use this over the internet, I would do a couple of things. I mean, you do have the ability down here to run an SSL TLS connection, so I would set up a SSL cert. And whether you use a self-signed cert or whether you use Let's Encrypt, those are both supported. I know those both work, and you can actually generate self-signed encryption keys within the tool, or you can import Let's Encrypt keys into the tool as well. You have, your basic time and date options, whether you want to use an external NTP server, network time protocol, You can look at your network interfaces. I only have one set up. This is under a VM. You can set up proxies if you want for your HTTP and HTTPS. Also, there's a FTP proxy. You can look at what services that are running actively in the system, and you can create firewall rules. Now, I didn't create any because this is already running behind a firewall. In fact, it's running behind a couple. If you are installing a standalone box, you would do that. Now, normally the way Open Media Vault is installed, you would download the ISO and burn it on, and then you would install it onto a USB key, and then that frees up your drives, so you don't lose a partition off one of your drives to host Open Media Vault. That's typically the way it's installed, and of course, by doing that, the USB ports are open. So that decision really is up to you and how many ports you have, where you install it. I, in the past, when I have used this, have always installed it to its own drive on the system and it didn't open USBs. That's, I mean, for home use, it's probably okay to use USBs, but if you're in a business situation where you have many users that are passing, close to the machine, I wouldn't turn USB on. It's just another vector of attack. Physically have to access the machine, but it is another vector. So you have some power management, you have some monitoring features. This is the area where you would go in and generate your SSH certs, and so it does support those as well, and also your SSL certs. Either import them or create them. You can look at what jobs you have scheduled, and later on we'll get down to where you actually can. These are cron jobs. Update management. Now, I haven't updated mine since I installed it. I don't plan on keeping this around, but if I did, this would be the first thing that I would do. Now, you notice there's an update to AMD today. Of course, the 3750X is out, so I suspect that's probably to support that. They're pretty good about keeping things up. So you can choose down here if you want to install from pre-release or community maintained or from their repositories. And there are a number of plugins that you can add on to this system if you need additional capabilities beyond what's listed here. And of course, these drives show up now because they've been formatted. Now, of course, the first one's going to show up because that's where I installed the Open Media Vault. And then the second one, I had to actually format and configure it before it showed up in the list. So the first time in, if you have multiple drives attached, you'll probably only see the one you installed the software on. You can also enable Smart if you want, and it's a good idea to do that with spinning Rust. Even SSDs to some degree that support Smart, it's probably not a bad idea to monitor those. At least it gives you some idea. Now, SSDs don't give a lot of warning when they fail. But rotational mechanical spinning Rust drives will. They don't fail with a bang. They slowly degrade and then fail. But SSDs, when they fail, they go out. That's it. There's no warning usually. You might see some sluggishness in writes, but just before they fail, but there's no guarantee. They usually go out like a light bulb. RAID management, if you want to set that up, these are software RAIDs. I'm not aware of, let me see if there's no, there's no way to add controllers in here. So this is all software RAID based. And of course, you can go up to RAID 6. Yeah, you can go up to RAID 6. Now, RAID 5 takes 3 drives. RAID 6 takes at least 4. Yep, there we go. Thought for a minute there I had managed to find another bug, but I didn't. No such luck. The file systems that you can, these would be the first step you would actually do to initialize the drive and install a file system on it. You have the options of doing Btrfs, ext3, 4, xfs, jfs, and that's it. There is no ZFS on here, so I guess that's okay. As you know, there's a lot of people that like Btrfs. I got burned by Btrfs, and so I don't trust it anymore. In the initial days, there was some data loss problems with Btrfs. Those have been corrected, but I trust ZFS. I don't trust Btrfs. Once burned, as the story goes, once burned, never again. So users, these would be the users that would be accessing the drives remotely. And also they do use the Unix file, the Unix user password and shadow files. So just be aware that you are actually adding users to the Debian system. All same for groups. So these are Debian groups. These are not stored off separately. Then you can tell it what files and what systems you want to share out. As far as FTP is concerned, you have some choices here. Now, I don't have any qualms about using SFTP, but I do have some qualms about using FTP. FTP, if you leave it as it is totally unencrypted. So if you're using this over the internet, all your data, all your sign-on information, your passwords is going to be sent in clear text. There is also a variant of FTP called FTPS, or FTP secured. That is not the same as SFTP. SFTP totally encapsulates the transmission in encryption. That is the login, the handshake, the data transmission, that's all encrypted. FTPS does not encrypt the handshake and the password. So your user ID and password is set in the clear and the data is encrypted. So just be aware. I'm not sure which one this is using. I know that it does use SFTP, so I would not recommend using FTP. And then, of course, you have network file share, which is not encrypted either, and rsync, which can be encrypted inside of an SSH container. And then you have SMB, which, again, not encrypted. And then you have SSH that you can set up for access to a terminal window inside the box. There's the diagnostic window we talked about. This just shows you an overview of the services that are running, some basic information on the system. You can look at performance statistics, and it does break it down by processor, by day, by hour, by week, by month. And then there's disk utilization, load, memory, network. So you can watch all of it. You get an idea of how your system is performing and whether or not your resources are being utilized or overutilized. Overutilized resources, in my experience, will invite hardware failure more often. So if you're really pounding away on your hard drives, they will fail faster. Not much else I can tell you about this. I can't. So let's go over and mount one. Well, I can't really show you, can I? So I didn't have any problems. Let me just tell you, I didn't have any problems with Samba or SMB connections on Fedora 31. I did run into a problem with Fedora 31 trying to connect using the file the GNU file tool. However, I was able to mount the NFS directories with the command line. So I suspect that's just a bug that Fedora needs to fix. So with that, I think if you're interested, I'll do another video on how to actually build one of these yourself. And again, thank you again for the 200 subscribers. Again, I appreciate it. I never thought this would happen. And so with that, hope to see you again in the next video. Please like and subscribe, and see you again real soon. And bye for now.